Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. My next guest was nominated for an Oscar for his portrayal of Lieutenant Dan in the 1994 blockbuster Forrest Gump. He's also an Emmy winner, a family man, a bassist in a rock band, and the founder of his own foundation, working on behalf of our nation's fighting men and women. On this Veterans Day weekend, it seemed the perfect time to speak with Gary Sinise about his career, how he decided to take up the concerns of veterans, and the work that has become the focus of his life. I spoke with Gary at the Gary Sinise Foundation offices in Southern California. Take a look. Gary, I want to start with your acting career because there's a nice tie-in. Really, the theater and film gave way to this, what's become your life's work. Tell me a little bit about how you stumbled into the theater in high school.
Well, I was playing in a band, in a rock band in high school, and I was standing in this hallway with members of my band, and we looked pretty scruffy, I think, and the drama teacher, this little lady, this powerhouse kind of tornado of a lady, walked down the hallway. She turned around, she said, "Come and audition for West Side Story. You look perfect for the gang members." And then she pedaled off, and I had just seen the movie of West Side Story or something, or actually I was in a different high school when I was a freshman than a sophomore, and at the other high school they had done West Side Story. That's what it was.
Oh, so you were
and
familiar
I saw
with
it. And then I moved, and it's my sophomore year, and now my new high school is going to do that play.
Then right after high school, you and two of your friends find what's become now an institution, Steppenwolf Theater Company. And you started in a church basement.
Yes. So I did my first play as a sophomore. It was West Side Story, and I met Jeff Perry, he played Tony in the show, and we became fast friends. We did a lot of plays in high school together. And after I graduated, I, with some of the kids, started this theater. And Jeff was at college, and he met this buddy, and they became fast friends, Terry Kinney, and we were doing this theater up in Highland Park, Illinois, and they were down in the central Illinois at Illinois State, and I said, "Come up for the summer and do a play with us." So they came up, the three of us bonded, and we said we were gonna make a go at starting a real company when they got out of college, which we did, and that became Steppenwolf Theater back in, the origins were 1974, and then we started that group in 1976, and ironically, I was looking for a space in Highland Park, Illinois, that we could do this in, and there was a Catholic school that had closed down. The parish was there, but the school had closed. And there was a basement of this place that the youth commissioner in this town knew about, because they had used it for like a teen center. He took me there. I saw the space. I thought we could put a theater in there. I went to the priest and said, "Would you let us have these kids?" I was 18 years old or something.
And
Would you let us have the basement so that we could do plays in there? And he said, "Sure."
Oh my God, and that's really where this institution now, I mean, look, you've gone to Broadway and the West End and films, and I mean.
Our first permanent theater was in the basement of a closed down Catholic school. Yeah.
It was a harbinger of things to come, Gary.
How about that?
Then you play, of course, Lieutenant Dan Taylor in Forrest Gump years later. I'm fast forwarding. That role, it not only marked you in the minds of so many people because that was such a beloved role, but it also opened up a whole new world for you in the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, I have veterans in my family, and on my wife's side of the family, 3 Vietnam veterans, her 2 brothers and her sister's husband. So back in the 70s and early 80s, I got this education from the Vietnam veterans in my family about what it was like to be a Vietnam veteran coming home from war and how difficult that was for them to not only fight in Vietnam, but to come home to this nation that was divided and turning its back on them. So I got involved with Vietnam veterans back in the 80s, just trying to support them in the Chicago area. And then I moved out to California and was trying to get in the movie business. And I started auditioning for some things. And I did a couple of movies. And then along came the audition for Forrest Gump to play a Vietnam veteran. So having spent the time with the Vietnam veterans in my family and others in Chicago, trying to help them, I very much wanted to play that part. And I went in and auditioned for it, and I got it. And that was very, very fortunate because it changed a lot of things, not only my acting career, but it gave me an insight into our wounded that I hadn't had prior to that, and that I've lived with ever since.
Well, I know a lot of the veterans, they saw you in that role and so identified with you. Was that really the catalyst that opened so many doors? I mean, because when Gary Sinise walked into Walter Reed or walked into a combat situation, it was Lieutenant Dan that walked in with him. In their minds.
Well, that was a time where my face was more well known than my name. Because the movie was so...
It's huge movie.
It was huge. Everybody saw it.
Yeah, you were nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah, and but not a lot of people knew who the guy was that played Lieutenant Dan. They just saw Lieutenant Dan. And when I started going on USO tours and all of that, they started calling me that all the time. And I'd go into the hospitals and go into these rooms with double amputees, and they'd want me to talk about that character.
And then on 9/11, in the wake of 9/11, you tell the story of being at a church, and you felt a calling. Tell me about that.
It was actually 3 days after September 11th. September 11th was on a Tuesday. And that Friday, George Bush, the president, called for a national day of prayer to happen on the Friday after September 11th.
Right.
So churches all over the country were just packed. They were filled.
People.
Everyone was going to their churches just trying to find some healing, something to help, deal with our broken heart. And I went to our local Catholic church, and our kids had been going to the school there, and I remember standing room only. I was standing up on the side, and they were singing "God Bless America," and everybody had tears, and I mean, it was very powerful, very moving. And our priest was moving in his homily that day, talking about service and how service above self was very healing, and that we all needed to try to do something to help our country heal. And I heard that very specifically that Friday after September 11th, and that, I think, galvanized something in me, and I just felt called by God to do something to help heal the men and women, who were deploying in response to that event. Once we started deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan, and we started losing people, they started getting hurt, I thought that's where I can place my energy. That's where I can serve. I've been involved with Vietnam veterans. I don't want our active duty folks deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan to come home to a nation that treated them the way our Vietnam veterans were treated. So what can I do to help? I can go out there and pat them on the back and visit them and do things. And I started doing everything I could to just pitch in, and it all manifested itself into the creation of this foundation that I have now.
Tell me about this RISE initiative that you have created.
We have 5 surviving quadruple amputees. Service members have lost both arms and both legs. The first one survived a bombing in April of 2009. And I had a trip to go to Walter Reed to visit folks. My buddy who was over there called me up and said, "We've got a quadruple amputee here. He's the first one to survive that injury. He's going to be at Walter Reed. When you get there, go see him." Wow. So I did, and about a year later, I did a concert to raise money to build him a home. And in the meantime, we had several others come in with the same injury, losing both arms and both legs. So we ended up doing concerts to try to raise money to help build these houses.
And these are not just your run-of-the-mill house. These are houses that are really, they're tricked out and accommodate their injuries.
Once I started my foundation in 2011, we created a program to help build these homes, and that's our RISE program, Restoring Independence, Supporting Empowerment. They've had a lot of their independence taken away because they can't do things for themselves.
Right.
And when they're living in a house that isn't specifically designed to their needs, there are a lot of problems. They can't reach up to the cupboard or whatever it is.
Yeah, they can't get upstairs if they
we
have to.
put all kinds of stuff in these houses to allow them to take care of themselves so that their caregiver, if it's their wife or their mom or dad or whoever it is, can have a little more independence themselves and their children. And so we provide these specially adapted homes, and they're very nice homes. They're all specifically designed for them. We have one that we're going to be dedicating on Veterans Day.
Tell me about Luis Avila, who you are going to be gifting one of these houses, one of the houses your foundation has created, on Veterans Day.
Luis I met at Walter Reed.
Wow.
And Luis has a traumatic brain injury, a very serious traumatic brain injury. He's confined to a wheelchair. He's missing one leg. And when I first met Luis, he could barely lift his head up or make any sounds at all. To see him today and to see how far he's come is really miraculous. I mean, I've known them now for 4 or 5 years, whatever it is, and they've been living in a rented house. Yeah. His wife, Claudia, is this amazing tour de force who has fought for him every step of the way and raising their kids and fighting for Luis to get him the care he needs. And I offered to support them with the building of a specially designed home just for them through our RISE program. And almost every day, I'm getting choked up. Yeah. Almost every day I will get a photograph, a text from Claudia, because she goes to the house every day to see
check the progress.
Here's the floors are in, and now the thing is in, and now the doors are in, and now the windows are in, and look at this, and look at that. I mean, they're busting at the seams. And this is a family. Luis he's made tremendous progress, but he's always going to need
special
care. You know, he's always going to need somebody to help him with something. So this special house will do something for this brave soldier who went out to defend our country, who
5 tours of duty.
Yeah, I mean, you have to read his story. You can go to the Gary Sinise Foundation website, go to our RISE program page, and look up Luis Avila. He's given so much, his family has given so much, that to be able to give them something back, give them a home that they can call their forever home, where she can have all this support inside to help her care for him, and where he can be a little bit more independent himself in there. And the kids will be able to grow up in there and come home.
What a gift.
And have room, not be all crowded and cramped. It's going to be just a real wonderful day to be able to see them get into their house.
Tell me about this initiative that's happening. When I walked into your offices here in California. There are women, a guy, but mostly women, spouses of our vets and our deceased vets, the people who paid the ultimate price. Every so often you bring them together here. Why?
Well, unfortunately, we have just thousands of military spouses who have lost a husband or a husband who's lost a wife. You know, certainly we've got children who've lost fathers and mothers. So we have a lot of grieving military families of our fallen. And I'm involved in, you know, a couple of different very important initiatives that address the needs specifically of our fallen heroes and the families that they've left behind, the survivors. One of those organizations is a great organization that's been around since 1994 called TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. It was started by Bonnie Carroll when she lost her husband. and there was nowhere to turn.
Yeah.
And so she started an organization just to help grieving family members of fallen heroes. I've had a great relationship with Bonnie and Taps for many years. And I told Bonnie that I wanted to bring a group out and just give them a good time here in Hollywood. None of them had ever been here before. Mm-hmm. So getting out of their small towns around the country and coming to Hollywood and going to movie studios and meeting, going to TV shows and doing different things, I thought would be just a great burst of joy for them, which they desperately need, going through this grieving that they're going through. So we're surprising them by sending them all over the place. And today they were surprised by coming to the foundation. We've got other things planned for them. Yesterday they went to see The Talk, the
Jimmy Kimmel show.
The show on CBS. Then we sent them over to Jimmy Kimmel. They came to my set and watched us shoot. Criminal Minds Beyond Borders. So they're doing a lot of fun things, and all I'm seeing is lots of smiling gals, and they need some smiles. They've just, when you hear the stories of what these survivors have gone through, one more heartbreaking story than the next, I mean, it just takes your breath away.
Talk about Soaring Valor, which is another program that I actually ran into one day at the airport in New Orleans.
Well, I've had a very good relationship with the National World War II Museum that happens to be in New Orleans. It's not in Washington, D.C., or it's in New Orleans. It was started by Stephen Ambrose and Nick Mueller. Stephen wrote Band of Brothers, of course, and a great historian. New Orleans is where they made the Higgins boats, which were so critically important to the war
invasion.
effort. And so the museum was built there. It's this magnificent museum. I have an uncle who served in World War II. He passed away a couple of years ago, but I got to spend a lot of time with my Uncle Jack. He was a navigator on a B-17 bomber. And after I started my relationship with the National World War II Museum back in like 08, 09, because I'm one of the voices in the movie there, and I narrate some things. After I saw it for the first time, I sent my Uncle Jack down there. You've got to go see the National World War II Museum, where they also record older veterans on videotape and then preserve them in their archive. They've got over 10,000 oral histories of veterans talking and reflecting back on what they did during the war, and they use those stories in the museum, where you can click on something and you can see an older veteran talking about a battle that's where there are pictures and everything. I mean, they really describe it. After my Uncle Jack died, I asked them to send me that videotape, and I sat there watching it, and I was very choked up, very moved, and I thought how wonderful it was that I had this document, and how sad it is that many other military families who have World War II veterans in their family won't ever have that. So I called up Nick Mueller, and I said, I want to do something to help the museum get more of our veterans on tape, preserved at the museum, but also to try to get more veterans to go to the museum. We're in the window right now.
Yeah, we're losing them.
They're, the average age is 90 years old. So how can we, in this window that we have, this opportunity, get more veterans to come there and get more recorded? So my foundation funds one of their historians, and through American Airlines, which I have a great relationship with, we take World War II veterans down to the museum to see it, and that's what Soaring Valor is.
When we were last together, you talked to me about, in the 90s, you and your wife are driving along in a car in North Carolina trying to outrun a hurricane, and she announces to you that she's converting to the Catholic faith. And that was kind of the genesis of your own journey to Catholicism. Has this been a faith journey for you? This foundation and the work that it requires and the people you've come in contact with?
Oh, I think so, yeah. I mean, I could say 20 years ago when I did Forrest Gump, I would have never imagined that my life would have taken this turn. I mean, I'm glad I've had the great success in the movie business that I have, because it's given me resources to do something positive. It's all part of the service aspect of what our faith teaches us. Service above self is so much a part of our church, and that you know, like I said, I could have never imagined that that's where I would be going, but I remember very specifically when my wife said, you know, her mom fell away from the church when she was younger, so she wasn't raised Catholic, but at one point, my wife turned to me and said, I'm going to become a Catholic. I'm going through the RCIA program. When we get home, I'm going to go to the local church and blah, blah, blah. And she did. She did all that. And so we had our kids go to Catholic school, which was a great thing for our family. We were going through some difficult times in those days, and the church was a great healer in many ways. And it's been very important to our family, very important to me. And at a certain point, I just, you know, something happened, and I said, this is a calling. All this stuff that I've done prior to this, movie business, the television work, the theater company, the success I've had, this is what it's for. It's to give something. It's to be able to educate folks about the importance of service, the importance of supporting our veterans. These are our defenders, after all, and they need champions.
Final question. After all these years, meeting with these wounded warriors, being with their families, I've always said actors are probably the most perceptive people on the planet, because you're reading things beneath the surface and on the surface. What have you learned from these people that you serve and work with every day?
We have some extraordinary people that are serving our country. I mean, the men and women that I have met in the hospitals, outside the hospitals, on the battlefield, you know, at military bases, going through training. I mean, some extraordinary people at all levels. You know, I've met the chairman of the Joint Chiefs all the way down, you know, and everything in
Petty
between.
Officers
And we have some remarkable folks, you know, at our academies. When you go to our academies, and you see, the young people that have been accepted to those academies, that are serving there and learning, that are going to go on and be our future leaders. It gives you hope. It gives you comfort that we have a new generation of people that are going to be our future leaders. That's important. But also seeing what they go through, just trying to face the challenges that they faced, especially our wounded and our Gold Star families that are trying to get over these tremendous challenges that they face because of their service, is humbling, it's inspiring, and it's motivating. It motivates me every day to keep on this mission of trying to do something with what I've been given to support them.
You can find out more about Gary Sinise and the work of his foundation by visiting GarySiniseFoundation.org. Check them out and see how you can help our nation's veterans and wounded warriors.